Hello everyone, my name is Ahmed Inaya, and in this video I will talk about Cisco Switch iOS and Command Line Interface or CLI. Let's start by talking about Cisco switches, or mainly Cisco Catalyst switches. Cisco Catalyst switches are the main LAN switches from Cisco, but they are not the only switches from Cisco. Cisco has another product lines for switches. For example, Cisco has Nexus switches, which are switches mainly for data centers, and Cisco has Meraki switches, which are part of the acquisition Cisco did few years ago. These switches are not part of this course, and our main focus in this course will be on Catalyst switches. The operating system for Cisco switches is called iOS, or Inter-Network Operating System, which is the main operating system for Cisco switches and routers for many years. Current switches from Cisco run another variant of iOS called iOS XE, which is Linux based, more open, more flexible, and more modular than original iOS. This makes adding new features much easier and helps in programmability and automation mainly, which we will discuss in day 5. But although the architecture is different between iOS and iOS XE, they have similar user interface, and I will use the term iOS for both of them in this course. Before studying Cisco CCNA, it is good to know more about Cisco products. If you go to Cisco website, you can see a link for products. If you go to Cisco website, which is cisco.com, you can go to products, and from here you can go to networking, switches, and then go to products to see the current products from Cisco. All these products are available currently from Cisco, but if you have Cisco already in your environment, there is a good chance that your switches are not in this list. And this is because Cisco has another list which is end of sale or end of life products, and you can go for this link to see more details about this list. These products are not available from Cisco now, but they were available in the past. For example, if you go to Cisco 2960 switches, which used to be common switches in many enterprise environments, and if you click for example on 2960S switches, you can see this notice here. This notice gives you details about the dates when this product became end of life. Usually, Cisco announces different dates for any product before becoming end of life. So for example, this is the date when Cisco stops selling this product. So if you go to Cisco after this date, they are not offering this product anymore. But although they are not selling this product, they still support it until the end of life date or the last date to support this product. Sometimes this is called end of life date, and this is end of sales date. It is important to know if the products you have right now are already in end of sale or end of life, because this affects the service you get from Cisco on these products. Cisco has many products when it comes to switches, and I will discuss a few examples here. These are Catalyst 9400 series. Catalyst 9K series is a new series from Cisco that was announced recently. These switches are modular, and many of Cisco large switches are modular. Being modular means that the switch has many slots that are empty by default, and after buying the switch, you can fill these slots with the ports you need. Usually Cisco has many options for these modules, and the exact final setup depends on your exact requirements and exact number of ports you need on your environment. In this series, for example, Cisco 9400, Cisco has 3 models or 3 variants: 9404, 9407, and 9410. This number here represents number of slots in this switch. So we have 4 slots here, 7 slots here, and 10 slots here. This number represents total number of slots, but they cannot be used all for user connectivity or uplink or switch connectivity. 2 of these slots are used for supervisor or management module, which means you have only 2 slots here for line cards, and you have 5 slots here for line cards and 8 here for line cards. These modules are called line cards, which means the cards or modules that are used for user, server, or switch connectivity, and these 2 slots are reserved for supervisor or management slots. Another example is Cisco 9300. These switches are part of the same series, which is 9K or 9000, but these switches are not modular. Sometimes we call them as fixed switches, but these 9300 switches are not fully fixed because they have modular uplink and modular power supply, fan, and stacking module. So they are somehow fixed with certain level of modularity. Fixed switches usually has different models. They usually have 24 or 48 ports. Different switches have different PoE levels. They have the option of mixed or modular uplinks, and they have different port speed that can be 1 gig or more than 1 gig. And that's why within the same series, you can find multiple part numbers or many products under the same series, and every product has different number of ports, different PoE level, different options for uplink, and different port speed. But all models have modular fans and modular power supplies. Let's take a third example, which is Cisco 2960X. Cisco 2960 is an old series from Cisco. Most products of this series are already end of life or end of sale, but this is the only series which is not end of life yet. I want to mention this series because in our lab we will be using 2960 switches, which are an old version of a 2960, older than 2960X. These switches are fixed switches, even the uplink is fixed, it doesn't have modular option. And same as 9300, these switches or this series have many switches which have different port numbers, different PoE levels, different number and type of uplinks, and different port speeds. If you want to know more about any of these products, you can go to Cisco website, switches or LAN switches products, and you can read datasheet for different switches to know the exact specs and details of every switch. Now let's talk about switch management interface. As a network engineer, the main function you want to achieve is to manage and operate these switches, and that's why it is important to know the details of a switch management interface. Cisco switches can be managed by different ways, like for example, command line interface or CLI, and this can be done using USB or RJ45 console ports that we will discuss more in the coming slides. Or CLI can be accessed also using Telnet or SSH that we will discuss more throughout this course. Cisco switches can be managed also by graphical or web user interface, or sometimes they call it GUI or web UI. This is a graphical interface that looks like a web page, and you access it the same way you browse the internet. You type the IP address of the switch in your browser, you provide the credentials, and then you access the GUI. It is more secure to use HTTPS because it provides encryption. HTTP still can be used, but when using HTTP, the traffic is not encrypted or it is plain text. Plain text means not encrypted, and this means anyone who is able to capture the traffic will be able to read it and understand it. Cisco switches can be managed also using Application Programming Interface or API, and this will be discussed in day 5 when we talk about automation and programmability. There are other protocols to manage Cisco switches, for example SNMP or Simple Network Management Protocol, and we will discuss this protocol later in this course. In this module or in this video today, our main focus will be on CLI using console port or Telnet SSH. SSH is more secure than Telnet because SSH provides encryption, while Telnet sends the traffic as plain text, and as I discussed before, plain text means not encrypted, and this makes the traffic available for anyone who capture it to read it and understand it. Switch management can be in-band management, which means management traffic uses the same port or interfaces as user traffic, or it can be out-of-band management, which means management traffic uses dedicated ports or interfaces in the switch to manage the switch. So for example, console ports are out-of-band management because these ports are dedicated for management. Telnet or SSH can use in-band or out-of-band ports to manage the switch. In addition to console port, Cisco switches has a dedicated Ethernet port for out-of-band management or OOP, which stands for out-of-band management. This port can be used to manage switches from a dedicated network for management only. Now the advantages of out-of-band management is that in case of any misconfiguration in the switch, or in case of the switch is not reachable over the network, out-of-band management can be used to manage the switch over a dedicated channel that has nothing to do with normal data ports in the switch. Managing the switch using in-band management provides a lot of flexibility because this way we can manage the switch from anywhere in the network. To understand these interfaces more, let's take a look on a few Cisco switches and where these interfaces are located physically in these switches. So let's take Cisco 2960X as an example. This is an example for one model of this series. As you can see, this model has 48 Ethernet ports. Usually in any switch, Ethernet ports are grouped as 12 ports. So we have here 4 groups, 12 ports each, for a total of 48. If this switch was 24 ports, we would have 2 groups only of these 12 ports instead of 4 of them. If we take a closer look into interfaces, we can see here number 2 is a USB console port. Many of Cisco new switches has an option of USB for console port and another RJ45 interface for console port. This gives you the flexibility to connect to this switch using USB or RJ45, as we will see in the coming slides. For this 2960 switch, we have both console ports, USB port and RJ45 port in the front panel of this switch, which makes it easy in many cases to access both console ports from the front panel of the switch. In the front panel also, you can find out-of-band management, which is Ethernet management port. This port is out-of-band management, which means you can manage the switch from this port that are totally different than the ports used to connect users. And this port is number 8 and located in the front panel also, which means we have all management interfaces in the front panel: USB-Serial console management, RJ45 console management, and Ethernet out-of-band management. This is not the case in other switches like Catalyst 9300, for example, where USB console is in the front panel while RJ45 console is in the rear panel. Let's take a closer look. This is the front panel of Cisco Catalyst 9300. We have 48 ports here, as you can see, from 4 groups. Each group is 12 ports, so we have a total of 48 ports. We have the uplink module here. If you don't need this uplink module, you can have it empty here. Now when it comes to console ports, we have the USB mini console in the front panel and it is located here, but RJ45 console and Ethernet out-of-band management are not located in the front panel, and there is no enough space to have them in this side. That's why Cisco shifted these ports into the rear panel. So if you look here beside the fans, these are the fans, you will see these ports located here. This port is the console port or RJ45 console port, and this port is out-of-band Ethernet management port. So this is OOB and this is RJ45 console. So if you need to access any of these ports, you need to look at the back of the switch. Now let's talk about the console cable. Once you find USB and RJ45 console ports, how to connect to these console ports from your PC or laptop. There are multiple ways to connect your PC or laptop to the switch console port. If you are connecting to USB console port, you can use USB to USB cable. Most laptops and most PCs have already USB port, which makes it easier to connect using USB to USB. But not all switches have USB ports, and many older switches have RJ45 console only, and many other network devices other than switches have RJ45 console only. RJ45 console still the common interface in many devices from Cisco and non-Cisco vendors. If your switch or your network device have RJ45 console, you can connect using serial or DB9 to RJ45. DB9 interface is the interface that looks like this. It is called DB9 because it has 9 pins, and it was common in all PCs and all laptops. You can use this cable only if your PC or your laptop has serial or DB9 port, which is not common these days. These interfaces are used to be the default for serial connectivity in all PCs, but not anymore. Now, if your PC has USB only and your network device has RJ45, or if you want to have a cable that can be used in all cases, whether your device has USB or RJ45, it is common to have this combination. This combination means you need one cable, which is USB to serial, to connect it to your PC or your laptop, and then another cable to convert from serial to RJ45 to connect to the switch or network device. This combination is common, and many network engineers prefer to have this combination because it works in most cases. When connecting to console port, you need to have a software called Terminal Emulator. These softwares are used to send commands and receive commands over console cable. Some examples are PuTTY, for example, in Windows, Terminal in Mac, and Secure CRT, which is common for both of them. You can use any terminal emulator you like, as long as it is configured with the correct parameters. These are the parameters that you need to configure in your terminal emulator to connect to Cisco devices. This is how the configuration looks like if you have PuTTY, which is common for Windows users because it is free and easy to use. In our labs, we don't need any terminal emulator softwares because we are using Cisco Packet Tracer and it uses its own emulator. Cisco used to ship these cables with network devices in the past, but even if you don't have one of these, you can order it online or you can buy it from the market. This is an example from Amazon for Cisco rollover cable. If we take a closer look into these cables, you can see this DB9 interface here. This DB9, these interfaces are called DB9 usually because they have 9 pins and they called serial interfaces in other cases. We used to have these interfaces in old PCs. These interfaces are large and they take a lot of space, and that's why it is common to have USB interfaces instead. On the other side, this interface is RJ45 and it is meant to connect to RJ45 console port in the switch. Now to connect this interface, DB9 or serial, to your laptop USB, you need another cable. This is an example from Amazon also for USB to serial cables, and as you can see here, this interface is DB9 and it is male to connect to the female side on the other cable. The other side of this cable is USB, and this USB is meant to connect to your laptop, and by connecting these two cables together, by connecting this DB9 female to this DB9 male, you will get a cable that connects the switch RJ45 console interface to the USB port of your laptop. This combination is common for most network engineers and it works in most scenarios. Regardless of the brand or regardless of the exact details of these cables, the most important thing is that to have one rollover cable in one side, which converts DB9 to RJ45, and to have serial to USB cable on the other side that works with your laptop or your PC. And make sure that this DB9 here is male, which means the pins are coming out, and on the other side this DB9 is female, which means the pins go inside this interface. So after discussing console ports and console cables, let's discuss CCNA lab setup. It is always good to have your own physical lab with a few switches, a few routers, and maybe a firewall, but this needs a budget, space, cooling, and power requirements. But in many cases, it is difficult to have your own physical lab, and that's why there are many options for virtual labs. Virtual labs provide many advantages for learning. They are cheaper than physical labs, and in many cases they are free. They are easier to build and modify, and they don't have any environment or power requirements. When it comes to virtual labs, there are two main types of virtual labs. You can use simulators, which means these labs or these lab tools don't use the actual Cisco IOS, but use some sort of simulation. For example, Cisco Packet Tracer is common for CCNA labs, and it is used simulators and not emulators. On the other side, we have emulators, which means these tools emulate or resemble the actual iOS environment. They are needed for more advanced labs or more advanced certifications. Examples of these tools are Cisco Virl, GNS3, or EVE-NG. In our course, I will use Cisco Packet Tracer, which is free from Cisco, very easy and very simple to set up, and it provides the required features for this course and for CCNA. To download Cisco Packet Tracer for free, please go to Cisco Network Academy, log in or register, and once you are logged in, you need to enroll into Cisco Introduction to Packet Tracer. This is a training course that gives you details about Cisco Packet Tracer. It is good to attend, but you will be able to download Cisco Packet Tracer even before attending this course. Once you are registered and enrolled in this course, you should be able to download Packet Tracer. Now the process might change from one time to another, and the exact version might be different, but the most important thing is to download the latest version from Cisco, which is currently 7.3.1. When you start the software for the first time, it should look like this. You can go to Options Preference to modify any of these options. For example, you can choose to show or hide port labels. You can modify the font. The default font size is 8. You may enlarge it a little bit to make it easier for you to see the icons. This will increase the icons a little bit, and this may make it easier for you to see these icons and to read what is written below them in this interface. For now, make sure to have this software ready because we will use it in the coming labs. Before starting our first lab, let's talk a little bit about CLI Contexts and Prompts. When connecting to the switch for the first time, you will be in user, or sometimes it is called user exec mode. Exec means executing, which means you will be able to execute certain commands in this mode. User mode is identified by greater than after host name, and this mode gives you limited access to certain commands, but not full access to all commands. User is limited access, and this is the access you get when you connect to the switch for the first time. In user mode, if you want to get more access or more privileged access, you can type enable command, and this command will move you from user mode to enable mode. Enable mode is called privileged mode in some cases because in this mode you have access to privileged commands, or sometimes it is called privileged exec. Exec means execution because in this mode you will be allowed to execute privileged commands. This mode, enable mode or privileged mode, is identified by hash after host name, and in this mode you have full access to privileged commands. If you want to do changes into the configuration, it is not enough to be in a privileged mode. You need to type configure terminal, and this will move you to different mode, which is global configuration mode. This global configuration mode is identified by host name, then config hash, and in this mode you can do changes into the configuration. From global configuration mode, you can go to many submodes and many contexts that we will discuss in the coming slides. This may help you to understand different modes and how to move from one mode to another. When connecting to the switch for the first time, you will see this prompt. This prompt includes two parts. This part is the host name, which is switch by default. Any switch by default has the host name of switch, but if you modify this host name, this part will be modified to match the host name you configure. The other part is the prompt itself, which is greater than. This prompt, greater than, means you are in user or user exec mode, and in this mode you have limited access to commands. If you want to get privileged mode, you can type enable. The switch may ask you for a password, and we will discuss this more in the coming slides. If you are able to authenticate by a password, or if there is no password in the switch, you will get this prompt. The first part is the host name, which is switch by default. The other part is hash, and this hash means you are in enable mode. If for any reason you want to go back to user mode, you can type disable, which is the opposite to enable. This command will get you back into user mode. From enable mode, if you want to do changes in configuration, you can type this command. In Cisco, we use abbreviation by default. For example, instead of configure terminal, it is common for engineers to use instead conft, which is an abbreviation for configure terminal. We will discuss these abbreviations more in the coming labs. Once you are in global configuration mode, which is identified by host name, then config and hash, you can do changes in configuration here. Some of the changes are global and they can be done from this mode, and some changes are related to certain interface or certain sub mode. If the changes you want to do are related to certain interface, for example, or certain line or certain sub mode, you need to go to that sub mode to do these changes. For example, if you want to do changes into VLAN 1, and we will discuss the meaning of VLAN in the coming days, but for now it is enough to know that if you want to go to this sub mode, you type VLAN 1. Once you type VLAN 1 from global configuration mode, you will get different prompt. This prompt is identified by host name, then config, and the name of your submode. So this submode means any change you make here will be applied into VLAN 1 only, and not into global configuration. Throughout this course, we will do many labs, and during these labs, the difference between these modes will be clear to you, and you will be able to move from one mode to another easily when you complete these labs. If you want to go back from sub-configuration mode into global configuration mode, you type exit. If you want to go from global configuration into enable mode, you type end. And at any time in configuration mode, you can type end or Ctrl Z to go back to enable mode. Actually, even here, you can type Ctrl Z to go back to enable mode. It is difficult to memorize all Cisco commands, and that's why the switch provides different way to get help while typing the commands. First of all, you can use a question mark to see list of commands that are available in this mode. This will give you full list of commands that are allowed at this mode and are available for you to execute. If you start typing the command and you are not sure how to complete it, you can type a question mark immediately after the letters you enter, and this way the switch will give you all options available to complete the command you started. If you type the full command, but you want to know more about different options, variables, or parameters available after this command, you can type the command space then question mark. If you are not sure how to complete the command, you can type few letters of the command, then press tab. This way, the switch will complete the command for you. But in this case, there should be one option only for this command, otherwise tab will not work and you need to use a question mark instead to list all options of this command. Cisco switch keeps history of commands you enter in the same session, and if you want to go back to any command you entered before, you can use up or Ctrl P to see the previous command you entered. If you moved up more than required, you can use down arrow or Ctrl N to go to the next command. Within the same command, you can use right and left arrows to move right or left. Alternatively, you can use Ctrl F to move right and Ctrl B to move left. If you want to delete any character in the command, you can move the cursor after that character and then click backspace to delete one character backward. If you like this video and if you find it useful, please like, share, subscribe, and enable notification to receive future videos in my channel. Thank you and have a good day.